Never stand on the organ pedal. So don't tell anyone I'm doing that. No. What this is, and I want to really kind of move through these things quickly because I certainly want Don to have time to do what he has to do. This is the Beethoven Hallelujah from the Mount of Olives. Who has sung this before? Yeah, okay. Depending on what kind of choir you have, if you have a lot of voices, you might have a chance to do this. Smaller choirs, not so much. As organists, either through the AGO or the NPM, we're called upon at times, to accompany things that are written for the piano that we have to transcribe for the organ. Okay? A lot of us sing things from Handel's Messiah, but it's usually what do I do? How do I do the organ? Well, when I was a student at Duquesne, I happened to take the colleague exam for the AGO, and that's also something you could do through the NPM. Okay, and gosh, it was 1988 when I took that exam, and I remembered there was an article in the TAO that year by Corliss Arnold, who's a fellow of the AGO, and he went through and he showed organists how to adapt accompaniments like this to the organ. Okay, so this might be a little advanced for some choirs, but I think a lot of the basic techniques that he talks about can transfer to a lot of things that are written for, like a piano reduction for the organ. Probably a good word of advice is to look at the original orchestral score of this. This is reduced for the piano, but what specifically did Beethoven write this line for? Is this a woodwind line? Is this a string line? What is this? And that might guide your choices when you go to have it work on the organ. If you go through with this piece of music that you have at home with this article, it's a good exercise. It'll really give you a lot of interesting insights into how to adapt something like this for the organ. And I just want to kind of go over some of the basic highlights that he talks about. In the beginning, he says you could use like foundations and a reed. He says if the mixture is not aggressive, use it. But this mixture is kind of aggressive. Okay. So just for demonstration purposes, I'll use it, but you may, think differently in your particular situation. But he says to use, obviously in the pedal, do you really want to be doing, he suggests just doing that in quarter notes, and then playing the upper three notes of the left-hand chord. So what you wind up doing is now when you get to bar 5, do you really want to be playing a chord way down here? So he suggests if you have something way down in that deep register to bring it up into a higher octave. Just playing like a D minor chord in first inversion, still with the F and the bass, so it winds up being. So basically, you're taking the bass line and you're doing it in the pedal, with longer note values. Okay, does that make sense to everybody? Okay. Okay, so like on the next couple of pages here. Okay, when you get to the fugue part on page 3, obviously you have to reduce your registration. Okay. Okay, and you can pretty much play everything that's written there. Okay, obviously the pedal has to help out somewhere. Okay, especially when you get into page 4 and page 5. Okay, like at the top of page 5. Especially in that third measure, like 2 after letter E, it kind of helps to play all that in the pedal, so. Let's see here. So I'm picking that up in the pedal. You can't with playing the sixths and everything. You can't do it, you sort of need help there. With the running eighth notes in the left hand on page 5. He claims you can play those, but I mean, at a very, I've heard some performance tempos of this that go, at a quicker tempo like that. So, you're obviously going to have to leave some things out, okay? On page top of 7, he says to achieve the decrescendo there, you obviously have to jump to a softer manual, you know. So at top of 7, and I jump to the swell. You know, just a simple manual change there. Now, what happens on the top of page 8? You know, sometimes these things sound silly on the underneath the choir to be doing that. So he kind of says simplify it, and the left hand should just basically be playing the chord or the underlying harmony. So, and you really kind of want to, you know, he has written in the top of page 8 crescendo, so you really want to kind of give the choir support. And there's probably in the orchestration instruments that are playing long tones. So why not duplicate that on the organ? You know, so what you're doing there is, I'm just sustaining the chord in the left hand, and the right hand is playing what's there. Because the choir really needs that support. They don't need, you know, does that make sense to everybody? You know, okay. Okay, then, you know, then sort of the same idea on page 11, okay, at letter K. The same thing. You know, the choir really needs to be propelled through this whole section. So, hallelujah, and you just need more harmony underneath. So at letter K, you really need to be doing. At the bottom of the page is the F sharp diminished chord. And the last chord. Yeah. And then the pedal, I'm just playing quarter notes. You know, that's kind of helping propel the choir. So these are just some suggestions as to how he tells you to sort of, you know, not play exactly every note that's there, but to kind of help give the choir support. Does that make sense to everybody? Yes. You know, but I don't want to go through the whole thing here because there's a lot, you know. But if you find your own score of this and you kind of study it with this handout, I think you'll learn a lot from it. And there are a lot of ideas from that you can transfer to a lot of music in the common practice period, you know, from the Baroque to the classical and the Romantic and everything. Okay? Does that make sense? Yes. Yeah. Okay, good. But I always thought this was a very good textbook example of how to do that. Okay? I have one more handout I want to give you, and I want to talk about...
Are there more copies of that handout?
Oh, yeah, you can get that? Oh, there... You know what, I made... Oh, they're right here. Yeah.
Okay. They're on
I made 40 copies. Here's another one. Could you all pass this around?
Pass those down. Beethoven, pass them down. Pass the Beethoven that way. Send them all that way.
What was the other one there? The first one you had?
Downstairs? Oh, it's going around right now. Take this one. Okay. The next thing I want to talk about is, this is something that we're all called upon to do at some time. How do you create a short 3-minute prelude before Mass that sounds creative and innovative and not just like you whipped open the hymnal, oh my God, I have to play something before Mass starts, you know. And I thought to myself, I want to talk to somebody who is a really excellent improvisateur, somebody who's award-winning, you know, who really has good chops doing this. Do a lot of you remember Luke Meyer? Yeah, right. Well, Luke and I have been friends for a long time. He's currently working on his doctorate in Texas, actually, and he won the AGO National Organ Improvisation Competition. He won the RCCO competition. He won another competition too. And I'm thinking, if anybody knows something about improvisation, he does, okay? And I called him last week and I asked him, what advice can I give to this group as to how to improvise a 3-minute prelude on a hymn tune, okay? And what he did was he sat down at the organ and he recorded himself improvising 3 different versions on Picardy. And what this is, he's emailed them to me, and I transcribed what certain things that he did, not the whole thing. Now let me stress that this is not meant to be played from the first measure to the end. This is just a chart of ideas. You all understand? Don't play this as it's written. 'Cause it's going to sound like a hodgepodge, okay? But what I did, I listened and I transcribed what he did, especially the areas that I thought were very neat or innovative. And he emailed me the examples, and he gave me permission if you would want me to email the recordings to you to sit down with them and listen and study this, and all you have to do is give me your email address, and I'd be happy to forward those on to you, okay? But let me just kind of briefly illustrate what he talked about. And somehow we arrived at the hymn tune Picardy, Let All Mortal Flesh Be Silence. It's also in our ritual songbook here, Sing My Tongue, the Song of Triumph. And basically what he suggested doing is starting with an ostinato figure. And an ostinato is a repeating rhythmic idea, okay? And he came up with a couple ideas. He came up with, okay, I'm playing that in the right hand, okay? He said you could do that, or you could also vary it and do something like, see what I'm doing? Okay. But for the purposes of what I did, I stuck with the first version, okay? And then he said to that, why don't you add whole notes in the pedal based on a D minor scale? And he said at the beginning you could start with D, B flat, C, G. So basically what I'm doing is in measure 5. See what I'm doing? Now you don't have to stick with those notes. You can do different notes of the D minor scale. I'm mixing it up. So you might want to start practicing doing that. And then he brought in the melody in measure 9 on the crumb horn. So what we're doing is, oops, sorry. See what I'm doing there? Okay. Then on the next page, and he couldn't stress this to me enough. He said, to him, what's very important is space. You don't want to just have everything happen on the downbeat. He likes the idea of letting the melody drift out for a beat and then come back in, and that's what he did in bar 13. See how I did that? You don't want to just keep doing. Yeah, and that just kind of frees it up. And then in bar 17, the example has you omitting the first note of that next phrase and just doing. See what I'm doing there, okay? So that's kind of an idea of how to begin the improvisation, okay? In bar 21, the rest of this I'm pretty much just giving you ideas for how to harmonize it. And this can apply to different melodies in the hymnal. This I call harmonic planing because you're ascending all in the same motion you're doing. But if you harmonize it with a melody, you're doing. See how you're doing different harmonic things there, okay? There are different typical chord voicings you can use, and then just different ways to harmonize it. I'm not just playing the harmonies the way they are in the hymnal. I'm trying to add added tones like seconds and fourths to make it more interesting, And we hear these intervals all the time in contemporary organ pieces and in anthem accompaniments, okay? Bar 28, I'm doing. And then there's what I call the Lauritsen chord. If you write a choral piece and you use this sonority, you'll make a lot of money. And then that next to last phrase, he suggested breaking that up a little bit, doing and more, space, kind of developing it that way.
Maybe get an idea or two, or make some suggestions of how I can do this differently. So, as I'm saying, I'm really just out there like you are, trying to get it all covered, and so I thought the easiest way for me to do this would be to print some things for you that you can see what I'm doing and what I have. You have exactly the same things that I have, and it's several things from a recent Mass, all right? And so since we were suggested that we cover a variety of topics, I thought that maybe this would do that by maybe talking a little bit about hymn playing, about possible reharmonization, a couple of acclamations. On one of the sheets there are 2 settings of the same responsorial psalm that will provide us some opportunity to talk. So hopefully this will make some sort of sense to you. With regard to hymn playing, everybody plays hymns, right? And it seems to me a lot of you are really adept at doing reharmonizations. The notion of phrasing, grouping, introductions, how long do you hold the final chord before you start? Does it matter whether there's a pickup note to be the first note? Do you have the big sheet? Does it say, Good Shepherd, you know us? Oh, cool, that's convenient. So Neil was pointing out that the great and the swell are not necessarily in tune at all times, depending on the weather. So I'm going to rely a little bit more on the swell so that we don't create that constant celeste. All right, so in my case, we don't have a Mass that's under an hour, so everything I do is like harried in my mind. I'm like, oh my God, I can only play 3-measure introduction. So these are down and dirty. I see this opening hymn, Good Shepherd at St. Denial, right? There are two phrases. The first and second and last are the same, and so there's one new one in the middle. We're not great hymn singers at St. Paul Cathedral. We have a lot of transient folks coming in, a lot of folks coming and going, so you never know what they're going to know, whether they're going to bang it out or whether they're just going to murmur along. But for me, I think they need to hear the third line because that's the odd phrase. So here's where I'm starting. The pedal now, the pedal. Come in. All right, so do you do this? Good shepherd. Are you looking for the text? Do you lift? Some of you might do this. Good shepherd. To accentuate the text. That seems a little severe in my feeling. But what if you made the left hand legato and lifted the right hand in those circumstances? So you could do something like this. Possibility, makes it smoother maybe. If you're in a dead room, maybe you need to do that just to maintain some continuity or some legato feeling. In this building you certainly don't because it's just endless acoustics. Perhaps playing one verse without pedal is a nice relief for people. Take off the reeds and just go this way. If you're going to make stop changes, make them audible. If you have mixtures on for all 4 verses, you may not even notice that there's been a change in registration because they're brutal. All right. So at the end of the first phrase, for instance, big change. So that's a couple reeds, get rid of the mixture, add a couple reeds, no big deal. If you're going to do, I think in our case, I don't know, you can go to hymn playing workshops everywhere and all the conventions, and you'll hear great people do hymns in all sorts of different ways. They'll color the text in massive ways. I tend to avoid some of this because I think that there's sort of a Catholic ethos that you don't get too crazy on hymn singing. I don't know why I believe that, but if you're going to change harmonies, are they aware that you're going to change harmonies? If you have 4 verses, for instance, and you vary harmonies throughout, then nothing special anymore because you've changed it all the time. So why not, save it to the end? So you've just heard a little bit of the harmony that we had here, right? How about verse 4 with this second column there, Noel Rothsorn. There's a publication called 200 Last Verses. It's one of many great recommendations, but here it is by Noel Rothsorn. This is just an example of a lot of good pieces in here. So it starts out like so. Pedal points. actually noticeable by people, and if it's supposed to be giving you variety, maybe you could tone it down and just use it at one point. We have at least gotten to the point where when we sing a hymn, we sing all the 4 verses, and so people, I think, have come to expect that, but in any case. Any thoughts, suggestions, better ways to do this? Anybody? Okay, let's move on. Look at the Alleluia. This Alleluia is the one we're currently using, and so if, do you see right next to the right of the hymn? So it's, which of course is, you know, Easter associated, Ye sons and daughter, O Filii, Filiae. Anybody ever use this as a gospel acclamation? Okay. We're using it all the time. I don't like that harmonization, but we tend to make it a little bit more modal sounding, so it's not either G minor or G major. But for instance, in our case, we'll do some sort of improvisation that intones it for the cantor, and then the cantor sings it a cappella. So we may start out with something like this. Sorry. Cantor sings Alleluia, Alleluia, Alleluia. Using this tone or not, but I've decided that in our space, either I can't do it, or the cantor might be a little different tempo or something. So we've kind of, you know, added a little cue at the end of the cantor's going Alleluia. In this case, it's just that as a cue to the congregation, and I think it helps because otherwise there's still sound. You still hear the cantor's voice in the reverberation going Yah, and so it's a little unclear. So it helps to give a cue. At least in our situation. In the case of the verse, if we were to use what's here, we'd have, I am the good shepherd, says the Lord. I know my sheep and mine know me. So it comes on the last chord of the cantor. Just a suggestion, maybe it offers some clarity, I don't know. With regard to giving a good, clear cue to the congregation, turn the page over if you would. There's a Gloria here. This is one that we do. I'm not recommending any of this. We are not the model. We are a model. The most that we could possibly hope to model at the cathedral is to follow the book. All right? It doesn't say anything about repertoire. I'm not saying you should do any of this stuff. But these are ones that we use. All right? I think they're clear. They're down and dirty. We used to really sing this Gloria very well until the words changed. Now we make them up as we go. All right, but the question is, how do you get this thing started? All right, basically there's 3 sections. You've got the big main section, you've got an E-flat section in the middle, and then it goes back to the main section again. But what would you do for the intro? How about this? Enough. Hopefully, you know, I haven't lost a sense of the beat. If you're not on the beat, then I don't know who's going to come in with you. If you played what was here, I think like playing where the word will is, that's kind of as far as we went for the intro. That's only 1 beat rest in this space. I don't know. I don't think that's enough. It's not in ours because you know, between the organ screaming and, you know, a million speakers that are planted around the building, it just gets in the way. As I said before, if you're going to make changes, I think with stops, let's say at the bottom of the first page when you're completing that first section, Heavenly King, for instance. Heavenly King, God Almighty Father. Something obvious here. Maybe that, something like that, or something totally different. But I mean, if you're going to make a switch, make sure it's noticeable. I've kind of learned that you know, leaving the mixture on just doesn't cut it. But anyway, in the effort of time, let's move on. You have another sheet, do you not? Any questions about that? Any recommendations? Okay. On your next sheet, look for the Psalms. There are 2 different settings of Psalm 126. The Lord has done great things for us. Part of, part of the topic was to say, how do you get some variety into some of these things? And because I've never thought of an idea on my own, I have a few memories that enable me to get by. And so, for instance, let's say the Lord has done great things for us. The first one by Michel Guimont. All right, these are both GIA publications. And Michel, maybe you've all met him. He's a Canadian fellow. He lives in near Montreal, but he works mostly in Ottawa. So he takes a train or drives and spends 3 days in Ottawa. And he's written a lot of great psalmody. This is one of them. I think that's about as great an example as you can. I set up a few things here just to find different ways to vary the refrain. So why don't we have, like this side to my right or your left, be the cantor, let's see what they do. All right, that's the cantor, all right? And you can be the judge, and we'll save you guys for Gelineau, all right? So, I don't know, there's a lot of great stops on this organ. There's a lot that are really, really loud. So, I don't know, maybe I'm used to being under the organ. I don't hear it as well, but this is like right in your face. Woo! Holy mackerel. But there's a lovely crumb horn, so why not solo out the melody like so? Cantors and... Why don't we put a lift after us, things for us? Let's take away the tied note. So if I'm smart and able, then I should go 1, 2, 3. Make that obvious rest. Notice I'm leaving out that cadence. The Lord has done. So this time take a lift, all right? So then everybody coming in, on this case, just 8/4 flute, or 8-foot principal and 8-foot flute on the great should work. Refrain, everyone, please. The Lord has done great things for us. We are filled with joy. Zion, yeah. We were like sleeping. Then our mouth was filled with laughter, and our tongue with rejoicing. Well, one tongue, okay? How many tongues do you have? And our tongue with rejoicing. Sorry, I couldn't help but be attracted to what you were saying there. Holy cow. All right, so second verse. Let's not have a cantor here for the moment. All right, so why not take this chord, all right, add pedal, solo out the top. You can, find a solo sound somewhere. Certainly on this organ, here's an 8-foot flute. So what if we did this? They said among the nations, the Lord has done great things for them. The Lord has done great things for us, etc. We are glad indeed. So make a counter melody out of the right hand. Take a note out of the chord. Or invert the chord, all right? So he's got a first inversion F major chord for the verse, right? What if you just did this instead? Or root position. Here, slightly different. It's just sort of moving it up, moving it down, right? Same chords. Guimont is certainly happy to have that. If you've got some decent solo stops that you can, move around with, then you could, do something like this. How about verse 4, for instance? Yeah. Here we have, although they go forth weeping, carrying seed to be sown. Just keep going down. They come back rejoicing, carrying their sheep. That's a little nasty, but I mean, you get the idea. Splat. It's helpful when you don't have to sing it, but I mean, the point is. Now we'll save that for the Gelineau, all right? So the point is, look for some of the sounds. I think, I came here a little bit early just to try the organ, and listen. I mean, there's a variety of great sounds here that you can accompany a psalm verse with, it doesn't have to be more than this, I don't think, not in this great space. So you could use an 8-foot nocturne an octave higher, you know. It's still way above where the pitch of the singer, so it's certainly not going to interfere with them, particularly if you've got a tenor or bass, but suppose you're looking at soprano, play it an octave down. How about this? Same flute, a little murky down here. That. I know everybody's got a penchant for Celeste, so you could, you know, occasionally do this, you know, but way down low, perhaps. Maybe add the sub-resultant, you know, that. Add some extra notes to it. You know, it doesn't have to be exactly what he wrote. I mean, there are only certain composers that we may know that are really particular about their music. Others say, absolutely, you bought and paid for it, do what you want, all right? All right, look at the next one then, if you would. The Prue. On The Lord Has Done Great Things for Us, the other setting, which the refrain is written by Richard Prue. You all know the Gelineau story, you know, the priest that wrote these multiple tones that GIA picked up years ago. And so all these American composers then had to come along and fit antiphons with them. So it seems to me when you're trying to make an antiphon fit with the Gelineau tone, it's probably best to start with the Gelineau tone before you go very far. So in the case of this one, looking at the bottom of the right-hand side, you've got, when the Lord delivered Zion from bondage, it seemed like a dream, etc. Then was our mouth filled with laughter, on our lips there were songs. So to that, then you have to make this thing fit, which is, there's our Celeste, sorry. We are filled with joy, right? And 1 and 2. I don't think you can go any faster than that, so. So the question is, he's got 3 chords there. You know, Richard was very cool at giving cue notes when needed. Often they would overlap with what the cantor's doing, but here it's not clear. With pedal, without pedal, are these just like completely separated, almost staccato notes? Yeah, that, or maybe no pedal, legato left hand, or all separate, with pedal separate, no pedal. Any preference? Anybody care? So every time, would you do those clunk, clunk, clunk? Do you think the cantor needs it? My point is that sometimes he would use them, sometimes he wouldn't. So, but you don't want to like mess with it in the middle of mass. But you could say to the cantor, whenever the people are expected to sing the antiphon, you'll hear those 3 chords. How about that? All right, so we have a cantor over here. Anyone? Just want to intone this? Anyone? Jump right in. The enthusiasm is overwhelming. All right. No pedal, obviously. Little variety. Cantors now sing, "The Lord has done great things for us. We are filled with joy. We are filled with joy. The Lord has done great things for us. We are filled with joy. We are filled with joy." Yeah, good for you. And verse 1. So, in the second verse, or the lift. You like the lift? Okay. Is it? Okay. Cool. Okay, what about this going on? So that was trying to accentuate each word. Is that clear? Does it even show up? Or do we lift everything? Okay. People are like, yeah, we don't like that. No, don't do it that way. Yeah, okay, so look at the next. I know, no, this is good because, well, that's the point, actually. So look at the word hosts on the next line. Bass part. All right. So I'm just wanting to say that sometimes I would hear him playing these sorts of things where he would keep one hand legato and another would have great clarity. And I think this is one of those examples. So from the top you'd hear, there's a big lift everywhere. Like this next one right there at hosts. Unless maybe you've never sung it, I don't know, this sort of, that left hand and pedal could be legato there. Sorry. Because the right hand lifts, does it provide an adequate rest or an adequate breath for you? So right from the entrance we've got this. Just given the example, especially in the pedal line. Look at the next page. Hosanna in the highest, where the pedal's doing this. 3, 9, 4, and 1. And his tendency would be to legato, carry on, because there's enough lift elsewhere. So at the top of that page, Hosanna. And he was like, oh, please, you don't do them all the time. Maybe if you've got a brass ensemble or something banging away, then it's perhaps helpful, and that's how he intended it, but it didn't say that you had to do it all the time that way. So his encouragement always was to say, well, adjust it. If your space doesn't allow it, then maybe you need to make things more legato in some spots or more detached in others, depending on the organ and the space that you're in. Okay, so we're coming up on 9:06, okay? We've got night prayer to deal with here. Can you, any questions about this? I think, for the sake of time, I don't want to drag you and hang you on here forever. I think anytime, it dawned on me that I meant to bring a page of On Eagle's Wings. Because that's always the question, how do you make something like that work when you don't have a piano? And we don't have a piano, so when it's requested, we do it. But if you played it on the piano, just as written, if you listen to it, you kind of get a sense of what is sustained and what isn't. And so, maybe if you're inclined to, want to sit there and I don't even know if I can, remember enough of this. But for example, which is kind of a funky part, for, an organ to play. But I mean, it seems to me you want to just skip all that and go. And, Sowerby does this. So don't say that's not unorganistic, So you could do, got the suspension and it carries on, and then the canter's in at. I mean, it seems to me if you can imagine what it sounds like when you're playing it as the as the composer wants it on the piano, then you've just got to decide what to sustain. On the piano version, you've got this for, you know, a couple of measures, or something like that. It's a D major chord, for crying out loud. Leave all it out, you know? Yeah, I mean, you can do that, but it certainly doesn't sound organistic. So, I mean, I find myself playing, you know, block chords in situations like that to try and mimic what it would sound like, you know, if you were on the piano. I'm sorry that that's not more, but there's really not much more to say about that, all right?